We're live on DSTV, channel 421, Go TV 144. I'm Ernest Min and welcome to Joy News Prime. In this bulletin, we'll tell you about 28-year-old Bintu, a head porter, who was taken to treating her 1-year-old son suffering from diarrhea with amoxicillin capsules meant for adults.
It's actually not an ideal procedure for people to open capsules and pour the contents into water to drink. Depending on the solution used to mix the drug for the patient, and when the child takes it, it could lead to severe abdominal cramps.
She will share her economic challenges with you here on Joy News Prime. Now, as flooding continues to wreak havoc in Accra, Joy News has intercepted correspondence between the Works and Housing and Finance Ministries on a request for some 800 million cedis to fix the flooding situation, which has been Largely ignored.
She told
me she called her children who were selling maize to come home when the rain started, but they never came.
We'll also walk you through the Auditor General's report, which indicates the Finance Ministry did not release on time the funds to complete the drainage projects that could have ended the perennial flooding in Accra. Also coming up here on Joy News Prime.
Basic economics. What people earn should be equal to their output and should be equal to what they spend. Allow our earnings are twice our output. There's something basically wrong.
The comments by government statistician that has drawn the anger of some public sector worker unions who are dragging him and taking him on for suggesting they may be earning more than they actually work for. We have details of these for you here on Joy News Prime. These are headlines. Beverly Broom will come at 8 p.m. with Prime Business. Hello, Beverly. What should we look forward to?
Okay, so the Ghana Bankers Association have rejected suggestions to regulate the interest rate. We'll hear from its Chief Executive Officer.
You know, we've heard these comments before, and our position has been one that interest rates, have never been a subject for regulation in terms of mandating, stealing for lending.
And at 8:15, Oreku will bring us sports.
Ghana forward Richmond Boachi Yadomas urged the locally based players to make the most out of the opportunities whenever they earn a call-up for the national team.
You have to have a why. Why am I part of this team now? So if you have a why in you, it makes you one of the best. If you don't have a why, then you feel like, oh, they called me, I'm lucky, and you come back and they called me to the Black Star just saying it.
We have details of these stories and more for you. Stay with us. This is the home of independent, fearless, and credible journalism. Hello again, thanks for choosing us. Now, at least 6 persons arrested in connection with the suspected terrorist attack in the Northeast and Upper East regions. We have more on this for you shortly, but first, we ask a simple question tonight. How do citizens contribute to intelligence gathering in the face of the threat of terrorist attack when the channel for communication is inaccessible? Well, this question has been necessitated by several complaints from some of our viewers who say they have tried reaching national security through the hotlines that were announced a few weeks ago, but have not been successful. So we tried from here, and there's the results.
So this is the second time it's not going through. I'm going to redial it.
We tried about 4 times and we did not get through to the center through the 999 that was announced. Now, earlier last week, the National Security explained that there were several prank calls that jammed the system. But security analyst Dr. Ishmael Norman says the lack of education could be a contributory factor. He spoke on the Super Morning Show.
So many people calling in, see something, say something, and they are reporting what they have seen without telling them the parameters within which they should be calling 999. You're going to be flooded. We don't have the algorithms, computer-based machine learning, machine identification of what is a threat and what is not a threat. We don't have that. Not even the cybersecurity office can do all this analysis for national security. We don't have that. So if we don't have drones that can do the eavesdropping, that can capture pictures and activities, we don't have that. So when you are talking about preparedness, it's not only about hoping that you are prepared. There has to be supported by technology. In the modern world, fighting any enemy needs technology. And I don't believe our government has been bold enough to make money available to national security, to have the equipment to be able to, for example, buy state-of-the-art powerful computers that can really do the algorithmically analyze messages that are coming to them.
Now, my colleague Kweku Asante joins me via Zoom with more details on these developing stories on national security. Kweku, let's first start with the status of the campaign. The campaign that was launched by National Security, See Something, Say Something. What do we know?
So, Ernest, we know that the campaign is still going on by the use of social media. Some ambassadors, we know of Kwame Sepakai and others, who are actively engaged in this. But we also know that there is no budget for this. And so all these that are going on, we don't necessarily know where the funding will be sourced from. But the campaign itself is going on, but there's no specific budget for the campaign that is going on, Ernest.
But what do we know about the difficulty with the lines? Is there an official explanation on this?
So the explanation we are getting, of course, from deep throat sources at the National Security Ministry is also pointing to the idea that the budget that was supposed to be funding this project is non-existent. And so just like the other part of the leg that I just informed, there's no budget for this also. It did not feature in this year's work plan of the National Security Ministry. And so although the code has been launched and some fanfare done about it, there's no budget, standing budget for it to fund how intricate it is. And you look at the Ghanaian population of 32 million. If people are calling today to this number, you need such a major budgetary line item to be able to keep this running. So there's no budget for this as we speak, and it is not clear what government is going to be able to ensure that this runs. And so the explanation we are getting from this source is that the lack of budget, the lack of financial resources may be the reason why this 999, the people are called in, there's no such response.
And again, let's make this clear. What we are getting is from our sources. There's not an official response from the National Security. But Kweku, we're also learning a bit more about the situation, the terrorist threat situation in Balu. Remember that last week or so, there was an intel that actually was leaked onto social media. But we are learning that there's an update on this situation.
So the National Security Ministry have been meeting with chiefs and opinion leaders in the Upper East. They've been doing that to ensure that they are on top of the situation. But we also know that some arrests have been made over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Some arrests have been made. The National Security they made those arrests to try and ensure that they're able to protect the borders. But the specific information about the electronic communication that was sent, that was leaked. And we know that Norman and others have spoken about it. This weekend we heard from a national security analyst who said there may be moles within the national security architecture. The national security, they are telling us that they are very much on top of this situation, and it will be very easy to actually get who leaked this information to the public because the details were sent electronically, and so they are on top of the situation. They say they are investigating and will communicate to the public as and when. Ernest.
Kojo, thank you very much for bringing us those details on these stories of national security. And let's stay a while longer with national security because international relations expert Michael Kojo Nketi has warned that a surge in terrorist attacks in Nigeria could increase migration to Ghana with negative economic and political implications. Speaking with Love FM's David Akweta, Mr. Nketi warned that the possible collapse of Africa's biggest economy, that's Nigeria, has dire implications for the West African sub-region.
Currently, it appears that Nigeria has lost the fight against armed insurgents, and the country, excuse me to say, is on a very, very dangerous path, which, if not halted, could lead to the destabilization of the entire sub-region, because if there is chaos, if there is war in Nigeria, we are talking about over 200 million people moving from Nigeria to any other country in the West African sub-region. Already, economies are suffering from the onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic and the recent Russia-Ukraine war, which has also led to inflation across the sub-region. And imagine Ghana with our current energy and challenge, security challenges. Imagine Ghana trying to create a new abode for about 5 to 10 or 5 million Nigerian refugees. That's going to be a very difficult toll on our economy. We need to prevent this now, else the repercussions are going to be very costly.
Well, he believes it's about time the Economic Community of West African States ECOWAS activates the military wing to fight the worrying trend.
Given the interconnectedness of the West African sub-region, the porosity of our borders, how we see ourselves as a common people, insecurity in any other country is also a threat to the security of another country. What the leaders should do is that they should join forces, intelligence sharing intelligence with the security agencies in the respective member countries. Perhaps this is the time to constitute ECOMOG, the military wing of the Economic Community of West African States, so that if Nigeria, Burkina Faso, or Mali feels the burden of jihadism, of terrorism, of armed groups, and the military of Mali, Burkina Faso, or Nigeria cannot fight these groups alone, we do a pooling or a pooling of military members.
Still on security and terrorism, security analyst Adib Sani is warning that there may be moles in Ghana's national security architecture, tipping off terrorists and hampering the country's efforts to prevent terrorist attacks. His warning follows an alert issued by the National Secretariat that there may be terrorist groups operating from the mountainous part of the Upper East region and asking the police and military to act. Now, speaking on the development, Adib Sani said the fight against terrorism will not achieve the intended purpose if those moles are not cleared.
Absolutely gobsmacked and short of words that such a sensitive document would find its way into the public domain the very day it was authored. So what in essence this means is the whole intervention failed even before it started, because I'm pretty sure that the bad guys might have got wind of this information before it even reached the CDS and the IGP. For such critical information, it has to be classified, and by now I would have thought that our information should be encrypted and it should be sent through secured service. Okay. And what we need to also do now is to investigate how come this information, which was authored just yesterday, came out into the public domain by the close of day yesterday. Okay, so what it means also is the whole project, whatever they intended to do, the whole counter-terrorism strategy they wanted to activate on the ground has been compromised, because the guys would know that, hey, our security forces are coming after them. So we need to investigate. It is highly likely that there's an enemy within, okay? Because if really you are a true son of the land, you wouldn't leak such a sensitive information. And we need to go beyond the writing of letters.
From national security, an 18-year-old has been confirmed dead at Tesano in Accra when raging floodwaters swept her into a storm drain. This follows almost 2 hours of Sunday's morning downpour. According to residents, the 18-year-old tried to salvage her slippers, which fell into a small drain, but fell and subsequently was swept into the storm drain.
This is Navi, mother of the 18-year-old Mary, who drowned in a drain at Tesano. During Sunday's downpour, Mary went chasing after her slipper and slipped into the drain and breathed her last. Abigail is a relative of the deceased. She told me she called her children who were selling maize to come home when the rain started, but they never came. She later heard that one of her children fell into a drain and drowned. She was trying to remove her slipper that fell in the drain. Prince Enchi is an eyewitness.
One of the siblings was standing close to where the incident happened. She did not call anyone's attention to it. By the time we realized, she was caught under the flood water. There was nothing we could do. She was lifeless when we got there.
He says Mary would have been alive if the drain was properly constructed.
Straight and on my corner there side into pressure no about na ba pim na ebu afaso and any problem I kwaso han my high pa.
Navi is still in denial of what has happened to her daughter. Mary, I want to die in your stead. Please come back home.
Sani paton so ma onumun so kakra. Mi banu anumun so.
For now, the body of the deceased has been removed by the police and deposited at the morgue. Emma Davis for Joy News.
So what is government doing about this situation, especially the Works and Housing Ministry? My colleague Elton Bobe joins me via Zoom as we go through the presentation to a presentation that was made to Cabinet and an impasse between the Works and Housing Ministry over funding. Elton, first of all, tell us about the briefing to Cabinet on the subject of flooding.
The briefing, as we have it, this was somewhere in 2021 when Francis Asenso-Boakye had taken over the Works and Housing Ministry. So at a cabinet meeting, he was asked to update cabinet on steps being taken by government to deal with the perennial flooding in the Greater Accra region. So his presentation touched on what has been done, what needs to be done, the financial implication, and if not done, the implications of what we are likely to see in the years that were to follow. And we're already in 2022, and we are seeing the effects of no action that have not been taken. The result of which we are seeing every day on a daily basis when we have the rains.
Did the presentation offer recommendations to fix it, specifics?
Of course, a lot. I mean, but basically, it had to do with government being bold enough to, back the plan of action of the needed financial resources. In fact, the presentation is even futuristic in terms of how much will be required in 2022, for example, 2023, all the way to 2024. By their own estimation, by the end of 2024, if government is current with the financial releases and the contractors are on track to deliver what they've said they will do, we should have no flooding beyond 2024. And the amount of money involved by 2024 will be 2.7 billion Ghana cedis. But as we speak now, even the allocation or the projection for 2021 and 2022 has yet to be released.
So what's been the challenge? I mean, you have seen, correspondence between the Works and Housing Ministry and the Finance Ministry on, if you want, a sort of challenge in terms of the release of monies to the Works and Housing Ministry to undertake some of these works in order to address the situation.
Well, the interesting is about the lack of reply to the many letters that we've seen between the Works and Housing Ministry and the Finance Ministry. In fact, it's become a one-way traffic because you see only the letters from the Works and Housing Ministry, but no corresponding reply from the Finance. For example, I think that the correspondence started in June 2021 when it became clear that we were faced with danger of being, challenged with dealing with the flooding situation. So, for example, in 2021, the ministry's first letter to the Finance Ministry was the application for commencement certificate for the 2021 Emergency National Flood Control Program. And the amount the ministry requested, according to this letter, is 888.3 million Ghana cedis. And the ministry requested this money to mitigate the perennial flooding within the communities in the Greater Accra region, prevent disruption of vehicular movement during heavy rains, provide means for safe conveyance of grey water, mitigate damage for infrastructure facility, and also mitigate the displacement of people within flood-prone areas. So this is the first letter that went to the ministry, and it gave the breakdown as, excavation at the Sultan, 94.8 million Ghana cedis, and construction works, 793.5 million Ghana, all put together 888.3 million Ghana cedis. So I'm sure they waited for a reply.
And Elton, you said this is dated when?
So the first correspondence is dated 4th of June, 2021.
Okay.
Yes. So they waited, there was no response, and then they followed it up with another letter, and this is 11th August 2021. So the headline is reference the same application for commencement of certificate for the 2021 Emergency National Flood Control Program. And this particular letter, a part reads, we wish to respectively draw your attention to the fact that time is of the essence in the flood control program. Our consultants will require adequate time to complete detailed design and go through the procurement process ahead of implementation. Construction of each project will take a few months to complete. For us to achieve beneficial use of these investments, they need to be completed before the onset of the next major rains in April 2022. And again, they provided a breakdown of construction work, 793.5 million, and excavation at the Sultan, 94.8. So the same figure, 888.3 million Ghana cedis. Again, they didn't get a response to this correspondence from the Ministry of Finance.
Elton,
and then again,
yeah, so that was a third.
Again, that was a third. And this is 2nd June, just 2022.
Okay.
This is this year. And in this letter, it says that following this, we respectfully, they said that at the presentation to Cabinet on the state of the country drainage infrastructure on 5th August 2021, the ministry detailed the urgent need to embark on the 2021 and future national flood program. And this letter actually warned that further the ministry continuous, decision to ignore their letters is creating a situation where they are unable to respond to what they need to do. So if there should be a flood, they would have, be in readiness to do their work. But the ministry is not helping them to do it. And they even requested just 200 million Ghana cedis to take care of some urgent work to contain what was likely to happen. Again, there was no response.
Elton, thank you very much for bringing us those details, those correspondence between the Works and Housing Ministry and the Finance Ministry. So we've cited 3 letters, one in June 2021, the other in August, and one in this year, June, in which the Works and Housing Minister is asking for money to be able to execute the plan to deal with this perennial issue. why the delay? Why the lack of response? Let's do some analysis on this. Engineer Abdullahi joins me via Zoom with more on this. Engineer, thanks for your time on joining this program. Let's start with what we are learning now. It's a row between the Finance Ministry and the Works and Housing Ministry. Do you find that strange that the Finance Ministry is yet to respond to such important letters?
Well, good evening to your cherished viewers. I know they can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Well, I think that it is the most unpleasant news to hear at this time of the day. We should know that the Minister for Finance does not have the discretion of taking or issuing or releasing monies which are meant for emergencies, especially once it has gone to cabinet. There's no sense of urgency from the Minister of Finance. In fact, in the coming days, we'll be bringing out a lot of information about the reluctance of the Minister of Finance in issuing or releasing monies to certain sectors of the economy to make things work. How can you be receiving such letters from the sector minister after a cabinet meeting has been held way back in 2021? Until date, monies have not been released. And we want to equate or situate all the context as an indiscipline factor which is creating the mess in Accra. This buttresses the fact that the Auditor General's report from 2015-2019 says that you are supposed to do about 110 kilometers of drainage in Accra, and only under 11% had been done. And if you look at the trajectory, from 2018 in particular, 2019, when we're rather having increase in terms of devastation and inundation of the land by the surface water, this approach of the minister, I think is unpardonable, and the minister should be held accountable for some of the issues that are happening. But I might be quick to say that in the report, I'm told that whenever in the event that these monies are released to the sector ministry, we're not going to receive any, we're not going to experience any floods. I'm sorry. We can do as many as we can in the terms of developing or expanding our drainage systems in the capital. But because the capital is a low-lying area, we'll be receiving some pocket. However, it's only prudent that whatever plan had been given out to the minister, money should be released as a matter of urgency to save lives and property. I don't know how we can hold this minister to be responding to reasons why he decided to do at his own discretion when the cabinet has seen the urgency in this kind of problem we are having. And we are the fact that we sustain this advocacy on TV and radio, we are not seeing the results. I mean, counter results of positivity on the lands. The more we talk, the more the devastation. The records are there to show. You are supposed to construct 18 buffer areas like ponds in Accra or in the capital to be able to absorb all the water, and none, not even one, had been started.
Well, you talk about the Auditor General's report, for instance, Engineer Mahama, and you, because you are in the business and you take on major projects as well, you know how some of these things work. When you look at the figures, and Kofi J of our research desk will be joining us shortly to bring us a breakdown of the figures of the budgetary allocation. We're doing some trend analysis of this. When you consider that, does that give you confidence? What does that say for you about government's commitment to fighting or addressing this issue of perennial floods? And I just want you to chew on that shortly. Kofi is here with me in the studio. I'll come back to take your response on that, Engineer Abdullahi. But Kofi, give us, a fair picture of what the figures look like in terms of the budgetary allocation that's been made over the years and what has actually been released to the ministry. What do we know? What have you found?
So when you were speaking to Elton made mention of some 700 million Ghana cedis going in for construction.
Yeah.
That's from 2021 to 2024.
Yes.
But if you look at this Auditor General's report from 2015 to 2019.
Well, Kofi, we seem to have a challenge with your sound. We'll correct that, and we will, come back to you for those details. But your response to the question, Mr. Mahama.
You have to. I want to see how you have to study the question in a certain context. I want to know exactly what you want to hear from that. As in the figures which have been given, or the in correlation with the construction to be done.
If you can come again, sir.
I'm asking that you're asking the figure that has been issued. I mean, the 888 million Ghana cedis. Are you asking whether it is satisfactory for the construction or?
Well, I'm just asking what your view is as far as the commitment of government. Do you think that government has shown enough commitment to addressing this issue?
Well, as far back as 2019, I was emphatic by saying that we look to do a lot of talk. And in fact, recently, I must pardon the Works and Housing Minister when I said that enough of the cameras. He goes around to check whether we're having challenges after the rains have come. And unfortunately, if he tables all this information to the, the minister, and the minister are not paid, the monies are not released for this construction to start in earnest, how can I blame the minister, the second minister in charge of Works and Housing? Absolutely not. That's what I'm saying, that in the first instance, the Minister of Finance doesn't have the discretion as to when he decides to release monies earmarked for such emergencies. And the earlier he's told in set and place, the better. Because the people who are losing their lives are not going to be compensated by government in totality. So he cannot, if the money is available and there has been a directive from cabinet, he needs to respect cabinet and release such money so that we would be able to address the challenge before the flood visits us in the rainy season.
Well, let's return to Kofi Ajay. And Kofi, you were just about giving us a breakdown of the figures. What have you found?
I was saying in your conversation with Elton, he made mention of some 700 million cedis being allocated for construction between 2021 to 2024. But if you should look at this Auditor General's report from 2015 to 2019, and you look at the amount we spent on the construction and maintenance of drains and culverts, you could see that there's a huge difference between the figure Elton mentioned and what we have here. And so the next slide, which talks about the construction of drains from 2015 to 2019, just like Engineer Mahama was saying, government targeted 110 drains to be constructed, and by the end of the year, within this same period, they were able to construct only 12.2 kilometers of these targeted, 110 drains that they said they were going to do. And if you should look at construction of retention pond, again, he made mention of that as well, 18 of them. And within this period, as we speak, government hasn't been able to do any of these 18, ponds or retention ponds that they said they were going to do within the period under review. Now, there are some other fascinating, findings, and one, it says that the Ministry of Works and Housing did not maintain completed and existing drains because maintenance was not a priority. So again, it's not only the problem of the Finance Ministry, but the ministry itself also have some challenge. So each year from 2015 to 2019, the HSD department, significantly fell short of implementing their targets of drainage, facility needed to mitigate flooding, nationwide. And what we've been speaking about almost the whole day, point number 4, I'll come to that. But point number 3 says that most construction works could not be completed due to the allocation of insufficient funds, over the period that were planned. And then 4 says, Ministry of Finance did not release funds on time to complete drainage project, causing the project to stall. Now, if you should look at the budgetary allocation for the Ministry of Works and Housing over the period, we did from 2020 to 2022. Now, from 2020, the initial allocation was around 268 million Ghana cedis, and this was slashed down to somewhere around, that same year was slashed down somewhere around 229. And in 2019, there was a further decline from the earlier year to, about 23% decline to 175 million Ghana cedis. And this year, the ministry has been allocated 429 million Ghana cedis. We just hope that this should not be slashed down as the previous ones were. Exactly. Now, if you look at the effect of flood, again from the Auditor General's report, so that the total recorded floods from 2015 to 2019, we could count around 1,446 floods, and injuries as a result of floods is around 309 injuries, and unfortunately, we've recorded 510, deaths. We've lost 510 precious lives as a result of these flood issues. Now, houses that have been inundated, somewhere around 54,744. And if you look at farmlands destroyed, people's properties, farmlands destroyed, it's around 136,563 in this period under review. Then again, still on the effects. So right from 1960, when we started having these issues, recognizing them, we've had over 4 million people being affected by floods, and this is about 12% of the current population that we have, and this is worrying. The amount of economic damage as a result of flooding exceeds some $780 million US, and at least every year we encounter at least one major flood event in
Kofi, thank you very much. The figures speak for itself. And let me just take the final words of Engineer Mahama, who is still with us on Zoom. Engineer, your very final words on this issue, this perennial issue of flooding and how it should be addressed.
I've been very emphatic to say that this results or the information that you are channeling out on your screen shows the lack of the will from the side of the government. Secondly, as population is increasing by the day, over the past 7-8 years, we might have had over 7 to 6 or 8% increase in population growth within the capital. Ironically, every house is allowed to tar the whole compound by preventing infiltration of water into their soil, by increasing the volume of water on the surface of the earth. Sadly, the buffer or the ponds, which are supposed to be accommodating these waters that will be gushing out of people's homes, not even 1 out of 18 had been done. This is pathetic, and this discussion had to continue with all the seriousness involved. So we can ask the sector minister what his challenges are. We are prioritizing other irrelevant things and handling them at the time that we need this one the most. I'll just digress 1 second. The overlays in Accra, we are doing asphalt overlays in part of Accra, East Legon, West Hill, West Legon, Cantonment, Osu, and in its environs. When this is an emergency, those roads are better to stay for the next 5-10 years. But this is a priority. But meanwhile, the minister has not sent any money to this area for any expansion work to be done in this area.
Thank you very much, Engineer Mahama. I'm grateful for your time here on Joy News Prime. And still to come in the bulletin, we will tell you about 28-year-old Bintu, a head porter, who is taken to treating her 1-year-old son suffering from diarrhea with amoxicillin capsules meant for adults. Thanks so much for staying with us here on Joy News Prime. Now, the high cost of living has compelled many Kayaye to self-medicate or prescribe medications for their children. A 28-year-old Kayayo Bintu says because she has no money to visit the hospital, she usually purchases adult antibiotics and splits them in half and gives them to her son anytime he suffers from diarrhea. She told Jojo Kobna that she wants to send her son to her relatives in Savelugu, but she has no money to begin the journey.
28-year-old Bintu is a head porter. She's taking a brief break from work to care for her 1-year and 6-month-old son, who is suffering from diarrhea. Bintu says she intends to take her son to the village to be cared for by relatives. She intended to travel to Savelugu in February 2022. But transportation is a problem due to high fuel cost.
This
However, there's a larger issue at hand.
1 year, 6 months. So I need to anyway. But I can't see. Now me got tablets name Benuno.
Edro we wine there.
Me ba ni dia.
Na be na ye no uba no.
Oni. San fin bio. O dini ko hospital ka u be dino. Lori ti o kita 5 million krampo now. So mo hu me kaya yo. O me be charge me siga say mintimi hu this am kwasra.
She divides the amoxicillin capsules and gives half to her child. This isn't the first time she's doing something like this.
Unim say edro we impedifo na say no.
Minim pa.
Unim say.
Minim.
When the catch you.
So me kita adro no me ni un say omo chira go 25 20 15 going. But sika ni hunting na me kita no me be chi me ma no me bia na ma fie kitwa bia go na ma di ma.
Antibiotics are supposed to be prescribed medication, but she got it off the counter. Also, capsules should not be split in half.
So certain drugs have harsh content. Their contents are quite harsh to the stomach lining or the GI lining. So then they are formulated in the form of capsules that the capsule are done in such a way that they then protect the drug from harming the patient's GI tract or their stomach lining before it's being broken down and then absorbed into the body and a whole lot. So it's actually not an ideal procedure for people to open capsules and pour the content into water to drink. Depending on the solution used to mix the drug for the patient. And when a child takes it, it could lead to like severe abdominal cramps. And also sometimes if the content is so harsh, it could even affect their mouth. It sores their mouth and stuff like that. Yes.
Again, the medication is prescribed based on the weight of children, but due to poverty, Bintu throws caution to the wind.
I had to tambale 1.6. Usi tambale ne by ube kwa mikuru 150. Ube suasa. Ube top bread ya uwa hinifia na uwa kituabi uwa jauba fie ube tima kwa saa. Na nto bibi biscuit kura kwa mano wontimi yesa disa woto bibi akwa dada no de ben be ko de minis kan be de na ko ube sua nyama bre sika o medi be ma onu so oniska na wo pesa onye sua nu na wa dwale oba na wa so andidi nti okita 2 cedi po na okase o sua sa wo be sua wo so pedi bibi ade.
Many of her friends here are in the same situation. They want to take a break and return home to work on their farms before returning to Accra to carry goods for a living.
Sakina, it's the same.
Sakina is in a food business. She stopped carrying goods for a living. The food business had been struggling recently due to rising grocery prices.
Niama bia ne boy di sisi anwa hwewe ukotowe esiri anwa aba niama ne boy di e pen pa cho se on to see niama e sa entu min koyo kuro anwa ne kasie ne 15 siri na we esiri ko sia first na we 3 siri we 3 siri na ba ko na 2 siri.
She yearns to visit home and spend time with her family, but she has not saved enough money.
Ye pan pacho on yesene nyama nya enkofo lor fe na enkofo ekofo ndia na bibia ko yetima nya sika na ebe ko no kuro.
Amina worked here as a head porter before retiring. She's now been caring for children of Kayaye for several years, so they can have peace of mind to work and eke out a living. She charges them 2 cedis per day, which includes food. She, however, wants them to pay 4 cedis per day, but her clients say they cannot pay, so she gets almost nothing caring for the children. Nana Poku works at the Great Imperial Bus Station at Agbogloshi. The bus terminal was sited there for strategic reasons. But for the past 3 months, business to the north has been slow because of rising fuel costs.
For now, on a good day, a maximum of 5 on a good day. But previously, we used to do 7, 8, or maybe 9 in a day. Yeah, but for some reasons now, they are not traveling in their numbers. The increment in the fare is a major reason. So once they get here, they ask of the price and then they just go back. After telling them the prices, and then they just tell you, I'll be back, but they won't be back. So to avoid buying more fuel or wasting money on fuel, we combine all of them into one bus and then we drop them at their destinations, various destinations. But on a good day, that bus will just be only one destination. Yeah, but for today, only four destinations.
Workers from Ghana's northern regions in Ghana, here in this community, are pleading with government to address economic challenges so they can return home frequently. Jojo Kobna, Joy News.
Hello and welcome to Prime Business. I am Beverly Broom. Now to our first story, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Association of Bankers, John Ewua, has shut down again suggestions to regulate the interest rate regime in the country. The Association of Ghana Industries, in a recent reaction to high interest rates, hinted that it will meet the Bank of Ghana to intervene in the market by engaging banks to reduce their cost of credit to the private sector. Here's more in the following report.
Businesses have in recent times complained about high interest rates, a situation private sector operators say is negatively impacting on their operations. The central bank, in an attempt to control inflation, has increased the policy rate to 19.5%. This is said to be impacting on interest rates as banks adjust their rates upward. In response to suggestions by industry to bring in some control, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Association of Bankers, John Ewua, maintained that such a move will be counterproductive.
We've heard these comments before, and our position has been one that interest rates, have never been a subject for regulation in terms of mandating, stealing for lending rate. Just like AGI will not be happy for their products, the pricing for their products to be determined by a certain external hand. The same way we are in the same market. Why would you want a bank to go through that regime? And in the first place, countries that went that route have all reversed because you cannot legislate it. It's not like the banks have woken up all of a sudden and have gone to increase their interest rates.
Describing the current situation as temporary, Mr. Ewua expressed optimism that the macroeconomic figures will soon normalize as prices stabilize.
We are very much with the governor when the governor said that we believe the present situation is for the short term. We all know the global economy where we are playing, and we also believe that most of the inflation that have pushed the rates to where they are now are imported inflation, and that as circumstances around the world with the supply chain constraints, tapering off, we envisage a gradual decline in inflation, and which should positively impact the lending rate. So we have every cause to believe that it is temporary. It's a concern, even if it is for the short term. But we believe that by this time next year, we should not be trending around the rates that we have at the moment.
Now let's talk about treasury bills, because government has finally sold a little above the target for its treasury bills auctioning following months of undersubscription. Liquidity had remained tight on the financial market all this while. Head of trading at Republic Securities, Patrick Edemagama, has this update.
It was largely on the back of the subscription of the 91-day treasury bill. Investors' appetite for that 91-day treasury bill is growing very, very fast. And this is because we've seen it close at 22.57 interest rate, and BBs as high as 23.5% were accepted for this particular auction. For the 182-day treasury bill, it stood at 172.96 million for the bids tendered, but only 171.01 million were accepted, which also could close at 24.41%.
For how long do you think this is going to continue? Is it for the short term, or we should expect this to go on for a while? Your forecast?
Well, in my opinion, I expect this to go on for a while, because if you look at the bids accepted for the 91-day, as high as 23.5 were accepted. So it should tell you that the next auction, we should expect bids to be going to that level. For the 182-day, as high as 25% of bids were accepted. So it should also give us an indication of where investors' appetites are for the coming days.
Away from that, some public sector workers' union have taken on government statistician Professor Samuel Kobna-Anim for saying that public sector workers are overpaid. Delivering his inaugural lecture at the University of Cape Coast last week, Professor Anim said while earnings for the average public sector worker is about 3,420, output in the sector averaged about 1,420, less than half the earnings. We'll hear from the union shortly, but before that, let's listen to Professor Anim.
Look at your inputs, look at your outputs. So I said, begin that conversation on productivity, because if you want to increase that 459 billion by even 10 billion, it depends on how much we are doing, we are getting on a monthly basis, on an hourly basis, on a weekly basis. So in this lecture, what I've done is to put together the GDP data and to put together the GDP data with the census data. Look at our population, those employed, and I narrow down to what we teach at the basic level, what we call the income identity. Basic economics. What people earn should be equal to their output and should be equal to what they spend. Let's look at what is happening in terms of monthly data. Earnings only from the public sector is about 3,420 Ghana cedis. On the average, output per person is about 1,420, depending on whether you use just the number of people or discount it based on the number of work, of hours. So we see twice the difference between our output and our earnings. I didn't speak so much about the data on expenditure because it's captured at the household level, so the unit of analysis should be looked at carefully. But once I see this, at a time that people are talking about neutrality allowance, our earnings are twice our output. There's something basically wrong. And this is coming from our formal sector. So when I got a privilege to host the UTAG executives nationally on our single spine, which was led by our own president.
But NAGRATS, one of the big unions within the education sector, are angered by the statement. According to the president of the association, Angel Kabonu, the statements from the government statistician simply do not reflect reality.
Very serious problem with the statement of the government statistician, because he has jumped onto the bandwagon of people who make generalized statements without giving us any measurement reference or measurement module that we all can refer to, or what he is using. Workers in this country work. Workers in this country have never resisted supervision. Workers in this country are working even when we don't have the working tools. And workers in this country are providing to the people of this country services despite the fact that government is reneged on its responsibilities. So we expect the government statistician, and in any case, when there is a title called government statistician, some of us have very serious fundamental problem with that title, government statistician.
Meanwhile, Secretary of the University of Ghana branch of UTAG, Professor Ransford Jampo, says it was not academic and scholarly for the government statistician to lump together all public sector workers in the assessment he did.
In these current times of austerity and hardship, it is inhuman for any academic to make assertions that palpably regard the toil and hard work of some real public servants. Any blanket assertion that suggests that all public servants earn more than they produce without first telling us the outcome of specific job evaluations and labor market surveys undertaken, in my view, is a sweeping assertion that can only be made by an academic with partisan lenses and partisan sympathy. You cannot lump all public servants together. You must necessarily disaggregate. Public servants are not necessarily homogeneous bunch of workers. There are those whose appointments are based on nepotism. These are the ones who, for lack of expertise, can be described as earning more than they produce. And this category of public servants must be distinguished from professionals and qualified people appointed within the public service who work so hard to produce, if you like, nation builders like university teachers, and yet receive pattern and get mocked that their hard work is rewardable only in heaven. You can also talk about the last segment of public servants who are politicians whose only qualification to office is excessive partisanship. They earn beyond imagination and produce propaganda. And so we are not the same. It cannot be part of any serious scholarship or any academic to lump all of us together. It doesn't show color.
Let's do football now, where Black Star striker Richmond Boachie-Adom says home-based players must work twice as hard as their colleagues based in Europe to be considered good enough to play for the national team. According to him, the European environment gives them an advantage over those on the domestic scene. He was a guest on the Joy Sports Link this weekend.
Most of the local players have great talent. I was also a local player before I went outside. You have to have a why. Why am I part of this team now? So if you have a why in you, it makes you one of the best. If you don't have a why, then you feel like, oh, they called me, I'm lucky, and you come back and like they called me to the Black Star just saying it. But no, if you have a why and you go there, you greet good morning to senior players, okay, but on the pitch you make them know I'm not here to make friends, I'm not here as a local player, I'm here as a Black Star player. You put the local player behind you, because when you wear the jersey you are not the local player now, even though you play in the local league. But when you wear the jersey you are a Black Star player. You train as you came. When I'm coming to the national, I'm coming to, you are taking my food away from me. So if I'm coming from the local team, I'm coming to take what you've been enjoying in Europe. There have to be a competition. If the competition does not exceed the European player, you have a problem, because the European player is coming with something that he is ahead of you in terms of equipment, in terms of some exercise, in terms of some sprinting, in terms of experience level, where the fans are full in the stadium with their confidence level. If you put me from Bechim compared to now, I'm more different now, because when I was in Bechim, you put me in a game playing like AC Milan on the first time of my career, there is a little bit like, hey, you know, you're a little bit shaking. You're playing against the likes of Ronaldinho. So if you come to the Black Stars, you see you see Jordan, you feel a little bit timid. This is where your training becomes different. People are not seeing that in the training ground. But people are using what you are playing in maybe the local league to tell you, oh, he's this, he's that. But when you go there, what do you show the coach? That I am a local player, but if you give me opportunity, I'll swallow 3-4 players here. There have to be this mentality and this why. Why are you playing? Why are you in the national team? You are there because they picked you to be one of the best. So you have to increase the level of your running, of everything. Because even if I'm a coach, excuse my language if I'm wrong, and nobody should hold my words against me. If I'm a coach now and I see a local player and a foreign player, you need to prove yourself to me that you are 2 times better than him for me to put you there. Because I know even in training, you train good better than the foreign player. But on the game day, there is an experience this guy has had in Europe that when he see the fans, he's able.
Well, that's how we're wrapping up today's edition of Prime Sports here on the Joy News channel. My name is Ore Kwampafo. We'll be back tomorrow, but remember at 8:30 tonight, where we'll bring you an extended version of the latest in the world of sports. My name is Ore Kwampafo.